can you state your name and then spell it, please?
It's Andrew Weaver. And you want me to spell the first name and the second name?
Yeah.
Andrew Weaver.
And how old are you?
I'm 50 years old.
Okay. What made you want to move to Australia?
There was a few things. At that time, in about 2002, I was sort of looking at getting promoted to being head teacher. And we needed a change in our family. We thought that it would be a good thing, not only from a job point of view, but also from we needed a change. And therefore we made the change we thought about moving to different places like Canada and Italy. But we actually decided on Australia because we thought that would give us a better opportunity, not only for me, but also for Harry and Emily. And crucially, that's what it was. It was about what was going to be best for Harry and Emily. And certainly at that time in the UK, Blackburn was going through a bit of a downturn, and we wanted to make sure that Harry and Emily had the best opportunities. And we felt that from a lifestyle point of view, from a weather point of view, from a opportunities that they would have, that's why we decided to move.
What were the main problems you faced when you were coming over?
The first thing was trying to get a job, and actually just going through the process of actually sort of applying. So you had to we spent 2 years actually applying for getting onto applying for citizenship or applying for a visa. So that was big. So there was we had to go through medicals, and we had to get all the documentation related to our qualifications. We had to get all those together. So that was huge, getting all of that organised. And then I suppose the next problem was then getting a job and setting ourselves up in a foreign country. So when I came over for a visit, I applied for a few jobs and then got one at Park Orchards, even though I did the interview over the phone, and at that particular time the phone was sort of, you got this feedback and I could hear myself and what I was saying. So there was a lot of things and I was disagreeing with it. So I'd sort of say one thing and go, oh, I don't know why I've said that. That's ridiculous. What a silly thing to say. Plus, because of the time difference, they rang me at the wrong time, and I was doing the interview in the shower, or I was in the shower when they rang, and I leapt out. So I did my interview for my first Australian job in a towel, dripping water onto all my notes, and so that was a bit of a challenge. But getting a job was a huge thing, and then sort of trying to make sure that we had everything in place that was going to help and make sure we were secure. So making sure we had life insurance and health insurance and things in case things went wrong. So it was about really planning it and making sure that we ticked all the boxes. So that included things like from a finance point of view, we overestimated costs. Even things like you were transporting things into Australia, so you can have your things might be sprayed because of contaminants and so on. So we'd allowed for that. So there was a lot of things that there was a lot of planning involved, and that was the biggest hurdle. And actually we thought the biggest hurdle would be then arriving and settling in, and actually the way that Australians treated us and the people that we met were just we were so incredibly fortunate to meet the people that we did, and Australians were so welcoming of us. They didn't resent us from being there. They didn't sort of they took us at face value and really welcomed us into the country, and it made such a huge difference. So we were expecting that to be a big problem, and it turns out no, it was more the preparation that was the biggest difficulties.
did your other family react once you told them?
Yeah, we told them probably about 18 months before, probably maybe 2 years before, and it was a big shock for them. And my family particularly were a very close-knit family. They're very sort of, they loved the fact that they had grandchildren, my mum and dad. And we went over there on a regular basis, and we used to go and visit my grandma, and we used to go and visit her, and on a regular basis. So it was very close-knit, and it was a big shock to them. And my brother actually described it. It was that when we left, he said it was like a death in the family. It was like they were mourning and grieving for the fact that we'd left them. So it was a big thing. For me, it was one of those things that sort of it was important. I felt it was really sort of essential for us as a four. I thought it was going to be the best thing for us, because there are certain things in mannerisms and the way that people in England treat each other, and the way that there's a lot of banter, and that I didn't necessarily enjoy. And I really felt that that was going to be the best thing for our family as a group of four. And it really did. It made a huge difference to us as a group of four, living and being together and spending so much time, together. But it had a huge impact on my family. And they, like I said, they said it was like a death in the family, and they were grieving for the fact that we weren't there on a regular basis. And it was a big thing as well, because my grandma was, what was she, about in her late 90s, probably something about 90, 92, 93. And it was, again, a big thing to leave her, and sort of, at that time there was no FaceTime and so on, so you were only talking on the phone. You were unlikely to go and visit for at least a few years. So it was a big thing, and they took it very hard. They took it very, very hard. And still to this day, my mum will say, "Oh, I wish you were back here," and you'll have that sort of emotional blackmail. But from a point of view of the four of us, I think it's been the best thing for us, and I don't regret it for 1 minute.
How many times have you been back to visit?
So I think we've been back. I think I've been back 3 times personally. I went back for my grandma's 100th birthday on my own, and we've been back twice in the meantime. I think we went back in about 2007, so we'd emigrated in 2004. So we went back in, like I said, about 2007. And during that meantime, everybody had come to visit us. So it'd been a big thing for, let's go to Australia. So that was a good thing from that point of view. And then in 2011, I went back for my grandma's 100th birthday, which was a wonderful thing, because she actually passed away the following November. So I went back in June, on the 24th of June, and then stayed over and spent a lot of time with her in a little old people's home. So it was a little sad, because she was living in a place that wasn't sort of her own place and so on. And then, like I say, we went back in 2015 as a family, and we did. We went to London, and we went here, there, and everywhere. I think that still has a cause of some resentment from my family, because they didn't feel that I spent enough, or we didn't spend enough time with them at that particular time, because we only went out for 3 weeks, and so I know we went for 2 weeks, and certainly in that amount of time to go and fit everybody in was sort of very, very difficult. And I still think they resent that now. And I know that when we were talking about our new trip, which we're going to be hopefully going on sometime next year, they were talking about, we'd like you to spend more time with us. So yeah, we've been back 3. I've been personally back 3 times, and the family's been back twice.
What's what's one of your fondest memories from living in England?
There's a lot of things, really. I think my family itself, growing up, we were very close. So my mum and dad and my grandma and granddad on my mum's side were very, very close. We had a lot of really good family parties. I suppose that's one of the things we were trying to balance up as to our children are going to miss out on that. All these sort of very close-knit family parties, which were related to my grandma on her side. All her sisters kept in close contact. So a lot of my memories are being with my cousins, having these huge parties for 70th birthdays or 25th wedding anniversaries or whatever, and they were on a regular basis. So a lot of my sort of memories of family and so on were very much rooted in those. And they were amazing. They were amazing sort of people, and they were beautiful people. And that was, again, something that we sort of struggled to sort of think about letting go. But I suppose the cousins were getting older, and there was less, and the gran and her sisters were getting older, so they weren't as often. But certainly, I suppose some of my favourite memories are being with our cousins. We had one situation where we were in Sabden, where we had this big family party, and the uncles played against the cousins at soccer. We played on this tiny little sort of oval, and we all went outside and played there, and there was a buffet inside, and so there was lots of different times like that where we spent time together. There was a lot of banter, there was a lot of things. One stage, at one of the family parties, the uncles encouraged us to steal one of the sweets, coffee Renoir, roulade, coffee roulade, I think. And so me and Neil, my brother, were like, oh well, we'll steal it. They're obviously just going to hide it. And so we got it and we took it into the porch. And at that particular time, the four uncles decided to cut it into quarters and eat the whole thing. So everyone, the lady who made it was really, the auntie was really, really cheesed off. And they were banished then to the bottom of the garden. They weren't allowed anywhere near the rest of the food. But so those sort of things were really good. And I was very lucky to have really amazing uncles and aunties who were really sort of thoughtful, very kind, very funny, lots of really, and I was sort of on the periphery of it. I was sort of, because I was obviously growing up, but it was really sort of nice time, and they were always sort of thoughtful of me and my family, so it was a good time.
What's one of your fondest memories from Australia?
I suppose we've done a lot of things, and been able to go to different places and really enjoy the climate. So a lot of time that we spent with Harry and Emily were the major focuses of our time. So I suppose that early time when we came over in 2004, that time of getting used to the area and going and visiting beaches and spending time with the kids. It's one of those things that when you have young children, or when you have children at all, actually spending that time with them is the best. It's the absolute. It's the most fun time you ever have. It was great as a family. We loved every moment of that. I mean, we'd done things in the UK, so we'd gone on walks and other bits and pieces around the UK. And then I suppose the other thing that really I really enjoyed was spending time with them during the holidays, which obviously as teachers was a good thing. And whether we were going out or whether we were making films, we made a whole range of family movies that we got more and more sophisticated as the kids got older. So we started off with a very simple one, which was about a necklace, and the kids were very, very young there, and we just did acting and that sort of thing. And even then, that was really badly edited because we didn't have the technology and so on. And then we got to more and more sophisticated and funny things, even that we were starting to put soundtracks and things on. And that was really great because you'd spend the whole day with the kids, and there'd be laughter and fun. So a lot of those things were huge for me. And then, of course, Christmas. Christmas was massive. Whereas Christmas in the UK was, we'd go to my mum and dad's house and we'd sort of have to be playing with the toys. Right, no, up we go, pack up, and off we go to, and sort of almost, you have to tick those boxes. You have to sort of, okay, now we've seen this person, and now we've seen that person, and now we've done that. And it's almost like you have to tick off those things, and who you've seen, and the presents you've given, and so on. Whereas in Australia, it was all about the four of us. And therefore, we decided we were going to extend Christmas to have our meal on Christmas Eve. And then we did just enjoy the whole of the rest of the Christmas carols and so on. And that was really good because that was very much about the four of us and how we related to each other and how we enjoyed each other's company. So you'd make gingerbread houses, and I'd do the turkey, and we'd have drinks, and we'd have laughs, and we'd have fun, and it was the four of us. And that was the sort of, I think the biggest thing about our life together was the fact that we had that opportunity to do that. We didn't have to tick any boxes. We didn't have to go to other relatives. We weren't obliged to do other things. We were able to spend time as a four, and I think that's where Emily's love of Christmas has come from, and I think Alison's love of Christmas has come from that, and my love of Christmas, and probably yours, in the fact that it was about the four of us, and it was about our connections, our time spent together, having laughs together. And that's where you look at from the Christmas decorating to the whole thing, it's the huge thing. So those things have been huge in Australia because they've been different to the way that we would have done things in the UK.
What main differences have you noticed between living in England and living in Australia?
There's been a few differences related to people's approach to life. In the UK, you have very much, I talked about the banter earlier, and there's very much a sort of way of talking to each other and sarcastically sort of pulling each other down and so on. So I found a huge difference between the UK and Australia and the way that they talk to, and the way the Australians support you and talk to you. I suppose the sort of big differences have been, from my thoughts, have been the opportunities that our family have had. I think the fact that we got a different lifestyle, and the fact that the weather is so much better. We were coming from the north of England, which was always fairly bleak and dark, and the itself was Blackburn was a very sort of, at that time, a sort of very sort of depressed place and a very difficult place to be. And as much as they had a lot of nice moorland and beautiful places to sort of visit, as a place to live, it was quite a challenging place. So to come over here and experience the weather that we have, to experience the people and the way that they treat you is different to the UK. The opportunities that it's provided for Emily and Harry, the opportunities it's provided for for me personally, the way that I would like to say I was heading for being a headmaster, and I sort of saw that as a bit of a dead end, and so therefore it allowed me to go back to just normal teaching, and I went back to sort of teaching and doing productions and that type of thing. So there was different things.
So whereabouts did you live in England?
So we lived in Blackburn, which is in Lancashire. I'd met my wife at college, and which was a place called Ormskirk in Lancashire. And when we first got our jobs, we started. Alison started to work in Bolton, so Alison found a house in Darwin, which was just over the moor. He talks too much.
That's right. Yeah, so where did you live?
So I lived in Blackburn. And again, I think that was partly down to the fact that we started off, Alison worked in Bolton, and we got a play, when she got that job, it was, we got a job, she got a house in Darwin. And I also think at that particular time I was very close with my family, and Alison probably less so with hers, and therefore there was that opportunity to sort of live in Blackburn and sort of be available in that area. And I got a job in Darwin, so it was sort of ideal for ourselves. Bolton and Blackburn, Bolton and Darwin were sort of in between. And yeah, it's a former cotton mill town, and like I say, it sort of gradually got more and more depressed over a period of time because a lot of manufacturing industry was sort of left. But on the plus side, you were never sort of 4 or 5 minutes away from beautiful sort of scenery, moorland scenery often. But we also lived near the Ribble Valley, which was again a gorgeous place to sort of go on walks, and I'd spent a lot of time doing that, doing a lot of walks in my youth with my family. And that's probably one of the things that I've tried to instill in my own children and not quite managed to do that. Because over here you've probably got a few more natural concerns like snakes and spiders and other things. Whereas in England, I think the only thing you had to be concerned about was cowpats and making sure you didn't stand in them on the way through a farmer's field. But certainly that area was very beautiful, and people were crammed into the sort of towns and cities. But that's where we lived. We lived in Blackburn.
Last one, can you just list the names of your family members and like who they are to you?
Okay, so my dad is John Weaver, and he's 80 this year. My mum is Valerie Weaver. So John is former foreman at Mullard, which was a big industrial Philips company that would produce light filaments, and started when we were first sort of in the sort of 70s or 80s, started producing compact discs, which were very sort of, oh my goodness, big things. My mum was a legal secretary. She worked for Ramsbottom and Company, and she did a lot of, and was a very capable legal secretary. My brother Neil, so he's a chartered surveyor. He has his own company. So you go around Blackburn now and you see Taylor Weaver, which is the name of his company, plastered around all over the place. And his daughter is looking to join him in the company. Her name's Rebecca. Neil's married to Catherine, who was a family friend growing up, and we spent a lot of time together at Revage Fold Church, where we spent a lot of time sort of taking part in productions and things like that. So Catherine, then there was my grandparents. So I talked about Gran. So your Gran was Betty Elizabeth Harrison, and she was a factory worker. She was a weaver, and eventually then started working in the marketplace. And then there was Jack Harrison, who was my absolute idol growing up, my absolute, the person I sort of really thought a lot about. And he was my granddad, and he was, he worked in the dairy industry, so he worked on the dairy side of things. So, yeah, of course, we've got Neil's Neil's son is Ben. So that's my sort of main part of my family. Obviously, I've got my granddad on my dad's side, but yeah. Is that it? Is there anything else you want to ask me?
Unless you can think of anything that might be.
Don't know. Can you think of anything now? Did I do all right?
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So your mum's turn.
So can you just say your name and then spell it, please? Because that's what I have to do.
Alison Weaver, Alison Weaver.
Cool. And how old are you?
I'm nearly 52.
So what made you want to move to Australia?
Weather, lifestyle, getting away from the judgmental lifestyle of Britain, really. And to try and make a fresh start for us as a unit.
What were the main problems you faced when coming over here?
Before coming over, it wasn't really a problem, but it was tough packing the house up, making sure the kids weren't too, or Emily and Harry weren't too disturbed or have too much upheaval, keeping all the regular day-to-day stuff pretty normalish, as it were, as we packed the house and told them as we were going along what kind of things were happening and what we'd do to prepare them for it. And probably flying with 11 pieces of luggage and hoping they'd all be the same when we got over here. But I didn't really think, there's nothing that's really been a major problem that I thought, as soon as we've got over here, it's been amazing.
At what time did you start considering moving over?
When Andrew started a job, which was a deputy head or a vice principal job, and it was a bit full on, and one day I said, okay, we've got the Times Ed supplement paper, do you want to look for a job, where do you want to go? And he says overseas. So we started looking at different ones, and we started looking at Canada because we had a friend in Canada, and you have nice hot times and you have nice cold snowy times. And so we looked at Canada, and then we even looked at Italy at one point. And then we had an opportunity to look at Australia. So once we looked at that, we could get in and did the assessment because we were both professional people and didn't smoke, and it was pretty much of a good way of getting in. We're both teachers. Just went on from there.
How did your family react when you told them?
Mum was really good. Told my mum first, I think, and she was amazing. She said, if that's what makes you happy and if that's what you feel you need to do, then you must do it. Which was amazing coming from an old lady on her own. My brother was a bit shocked and went, okay, great, that's great. Didn't really talk and debrief after we'd told Alan, really. Eileen, I told her at my nephew's Adam's 18th birthday, which probably wasn't the right time to do it, but There's a bit of a feud between them two. So as soon as Alan knew, I had to tell Eileen. So didn't really have a sort of impact of, oh my goodness, that's devastating news, because, you know, they weren't really good at feedback. So, yeah, and there wasn't really anybody else in my family, really. It was just consisted of those three people. So it wasn't I suppose it was devastating for Mum, but wasn't as devastating as we got feedback from, you know, Andrew's side. So.
How many times have you been back to visit?
I've been back twice. First time, I think it was like 2007. And then we went, probably like 4 years ago now. So yeah, twice.
What did you do for work when you first came over?
The first about 6 months, I just settled in the family, and Emily was at school with Andrew at that school, and Harry was at kinder. So I literally made it my job to settle him in and make friends, really, so we could have a really nice friendship type group, and you know, and then I started doing some CRT work, which was like relief teaching, to get myself back into my career, and then got a little part-time job at Park Orchards, and then I had a maternity leave, which was like a 2-term full-time, and then got an art job at Livingston, so that's where I've been since.
Do you miss anything about England, and what do you miss the most about it?
Mum.
What's one of your fondest memories?
I've been thinking about this. I think the fondest memory, not necessarily of England, but maybe of my childhood, is when we were at church, we used to be in pantomimes. And I think that's probably the funnest time, as well as being at uni with my friends. That was a great time too. But apart from anything else, it's just being with friends and being with people that supported you, really, and you had a bit of a laugh with. Yeah, it's probably the most thing that I miss, the nicest times.
What's one of your fondest memories from living in Australia?
Oh, beaches, family times, making forts with the kids. Every holiday after we'd watched The Holiday, we'd just build forts and build them and have fun and go to beaches and go on walks and have picnics. And making friends was good, but those are the fun times, and really big Christmases. And because Christmas was always a focus for me as a kid, because it was a bit dark in our house after the death of my sister. So Christmas, with me, my birthday being 2 weeks before Christmas and then actual Christmas, it was a time where everybody seemed to be a bit more jolly and happy, and everything was decorated. So that was fun. So Christmas has always been a really big thing. So, and to have it in the summer over here is even better.
How long did it take for you to adjust to life in Australia?
Not long, really. With it being a very westernised country, the people were absolutely delightful. Felt very at home here straight away. So it didn't take long. The only thing is just maybe different things like, you know, the health systems, and getting to find out and what you can and can't do at different places. But it was really easy to settle into straight away.
Have you noticed any major differences between living here and living in England?
Yeah, personally, and I suppose geographically, because we've got a lot more space than we had over in the UK. It was very, very tight and cramped and very dull, whereas here there's a lot of sunlight, there's a lot more room, a lot more space, and people are nicer, not as judgmental. So yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, like Dad, can you just say your family members and who they are to you?
Ivy Holt, she's my mum. Eileen Scholes, she's my sister. Martin Scholes is my brother-in-law, her husband, and they have 2 kids, Adam and Neil. And my brother Alan, he's got 2 boys, Edward and William, my nephews. And their mum is Jennifer, which their mum and dad are separated now, but still part of the family. Oh, I should do more, shouldn't I? Did you say more of my?
I just said just list your family members and who they are to you.
Oh, see, that's probably not enough information.
Do you want to do
Because I want to do my family. I just think as family from like my side rather than you're my family.
do us 3 as well.
Yeah, so there's Andrew, that's my husband, Andrew Weaver.
We'll do yours. Sorry, I'll just get you to do that again. We'll do yours after. Okay.
Because my immediate family is Andrew Weaver and Emily Sarah Weaver, who's my daughter, and who's the other one? Harrison Andrew Weaver, he's my gorgeous son. And yes,